This video is proudly sponsored by Squarespace. If there's one feature we associate with a superhero-esque physique, it's a massive chest. Many of us want to get that look, as though we were drawn by Jim Lee, or maybe Rob Liefeld. That's a very nerdy joke, by the way, and it's not even fair because I actually have a soft spot for his art. And 90s comics in general. Anyway, powerful pecs are also important from a functional standpoint. If a movement involves pushing or squeezing, it's going to need pecs. So how do we get pecs that look superheroic and perform accordingly? Loads of bench press, right? Well, maybe not. I know this is going to get a little bit of a backlash, but I actually think doing lots of bench press is not the best use of time for most people. I'd like to take this moment to say that I'm not telling you not to bench. As we'll see in a moment, I still bench. And I'd also like to point out that my content is not intended to be prescriptive at the best of times. I'm just here to say, hey, have you thought about it like this? I have a pretty strong chest. I can bench 100 kilograms for more than 10 reps fairly easily. It's decent, but nothing special in this day and age where every TikToker and their aunt seems to be able to bench hundreds of kilograms and then perform standing double backflips. But I would argue that I never actually need to be able to bench more than that. Why? Because there's no practical movement similar to the bench press. This video topic is inspired by a conversation I had in the comments with a viewer. They made a ton of good counter-arguments, but I'm still steadfast in this view. So thanks to them for the debate and for the inspiration. But if I ever need to push 100 kilograms, it's going to be from standing up. And seeing as I weigh between 75 and 80 kilograms, I'm never going to be able to push more than that without falling over. It's physics. We can actually demonstrate this with the cable press. If I go to the cable press and attempt to push 100 kilograms, the max setting, I won't even be able to get it to move. Try it yourself. I'm struggling at 60 kilograms. Now, a powerlifter might well have a lot more weight behind them and be able to push more. But that's not a product of stronger pecs, and it's not conducive to a good strength to weight ratio. You'll push more, but you won't be able to run as fast or jump as high because you'll be heavier. And if you somehow manage to build that pec strength without gaining the weight, well then we're back to the same problem. So why would I ever need to be able to bench more than that? The counter-argument is that benching will build greater max strength by adding stability, and that will translate to other movements. The great example that the commenter made was that if you were to throw a ball from your chest, it would go faster and further if you were stronger, if you had a big bench press. And this is true, but it's not super useful unless you're purely interested in throwing balls like that, and maybe pushing people, only who are lighter than you, for distance. Is that a sport? Even then though, you can get the same results from explosive push-ups or simply pushing with greater focus on bar speed. Why? Because rate of force production and power aren't purely a product of strength. Sure, greater max strength will potentially increase your capacity for max power, but if you're benching 100 kilograms, I guarantee that that's not the limiting factor. And if you're benching 50 kilograms, it's probably not the limiting factor either. Some barbell supremists will tell you that you can't increase explosiveness beyond what you get from regular powerlifting. They say that you can't convert fiber types much beyond your genetic reality, so what's the point? Well, this isn't true according to the studies, but moreover, explosiveness comes down to a lot of other factors. Reciprocal inhibition, rate coding, intramuscular coordination, intermuscular coordination, all of which can be trained other ways, more effectively. Plyometric exercises, for example, are more useful for this. We see this with the squat. The squat is great for increasing your vertical jump, but at a certain point you get diminishing returns and you'll do better with depth jumps. In fact, using a more plyometric movement for the chest might actually be more effective at building power. That's because studies show us that as we add more weight to a movement and it becomes slower, it actually translates less to things like jump height and running speed, because the intent changes. You're now grinding through a heavy movement instead of trying to push explosively. There's no harm in using bench press to develop power, but it's not the most efficient. And when we consider the large amounts of fatigue that the bench press causes and the long recovery periods necessary, it's just not an optimal choice for most athletes or those interested in functional performance. The other issue is the short range of motion. The adduction is somewhat limited compared with something like a pec fly, but this is significantly worse if you're going for massive numbers using a powerlifter strategy, such as retracting the scapula and arching the back. This doesn't favour strength through a full range of motion. It doesn't emulate any kind of movement you might really use, and it's not optimal for hypertrophy. It's only useful for increasing your numbers on that one lift. And building massive strength in this short range of motion does impact negatively on your mobility, your posture, and therefore your performance. I've heard people dismiss the whole idea of posture, saying that you can straighten up anytime you like, so it's clearly not a thing. But training can impact on your muscle's optimal resting length, as I discussed in another video, and posture is more so learned. Oh, hi there. So I get how this might be coming across. Maybe you watched this video just hoping for some tips on how to build a bigger chest, and so far it's just been a discussion about why the bench press is overrated. The bench press isn't a waste of time. It can be a really great coverall if you want to make sure that you build some decent strength, well, a lot of strength. If you also want to build bigger pecs and at the same time you just enjoy the feeling of bench pressing. If you're interested in gaining a lot of weight and becoming a powerlifter and you can utilize more of that strength, then yeah, it can be a really great way to become like a tank. And yeah, I personally still bench press. I think it's a lot of fun. But if you're interested in being as functional and athletic as possible, if you want to be fast, light, but powerful, explosive, and maybe even to have better definition in terms of hypertrophy, I'm just saying that the bench press might not be the optimal choice, and it's going to have diminishing returns as you get to the point where you're struggling to add 5 kilograms on to increase your bench press. You might want to ask yourself how much that's taking from the rest of your training and where you're actually going to see those benefits in your everyday life, in your sports and athleticism, and whether there might be more efficient ways of doing it. And the reason that I'm telling you all this is because it'll help to highlight why the exercises that I'm going to suggest instead are in some ways more effective for quite a lot of people. Like I say, there's no one-size-fits-all to training, and I want to take nothing away from people who enjoy doing the bench press. I'm just saying that being extremely, extremely strong on this one movement might not have the carryover to other activities that you could potentially presume it does. My goal is simply to get you to question the way you've been training and to see if it's definitely the right thing for you, and perhaps to deconstruct some assumptions. Because I find it interesting that most people spend such a disproportionate amount of time at the gym pushing, when in fact, if you think about it, most sports involve a lot more pulling and rotating. So with that said, what do we do to build the most powerful chest in the most efficient way possible? Well, I'm going to advocate for those cable presses. I know that's going to get some eyes rolling, but hear me out. This trains you to push with your whole body, the way you're meant to. And I do the movement by combining it with a fly. I let my arms go all the way back. This helps build strength in the pecs at the end range of motion, improving mobility and potentially posture. And it's great for hypertrophy when you do it this way. This is a weighted stretch, and it includes a really slow eccentric portion. Lengths and partials are all the rage right now, and while they might be a little bit overhyped, the fact is that this kind of training does build muscle. Arnie knew it. He would use the pec flies to the point where he really felt the stretch. And this eccentric loading is also really good for strengthening the tendons. Sure, it doesn't give you bragging rights in the same way that a massive bench press does. It doesn't feel like you're getting stronger and making progress to the same extent. Functional training like this is kind of more fiddly, it's more nuanced, but that's not a bug, it's a feature. You'll get the same practical benefits as you would do otherwise with less fatigue. The other exercise I'm going to recommend is the prisoner push-up. That's not an official name, but I'm referring it to that way as many people will get the idea. Basically, we're doing rapid push-ups with no lockout and a large continuous time under tension. I'm doing the push-ups by exploding from the bottom, letting gravity do the rest, then catching myself and bouncing up again. Not only does this method have the rapid rate of force production, the intent to go fast and explosively that translates to greater performance, but it also builds strength endurance and lots of metabolic buildup. That metabolic buildup occurs because the pecs are working without a proper rest, without that lockout. And as we get into the higher rep ranges, we're talking 30, 50, 100, or even multiple hundreds, this creates a huge buildup of hypertrophy-stimulating metabolites. It also forces the fast-twitch muscle fibers to get involved, as these slower-twitch fibers are fatigued, and an element of hypoxia is introduced. See my previous videos discussing Henneman's size principle for more. And it's also just because of that intent to go fast. This is effectively just a high bar speed. But the bar in this case is you. This increased blood flow is also great for nourishing tendons, which have a lower blood supply than muscle. The result is that this kind of high-rep, closed-chain bodyweight training can result in impressive explosiveness, surprisingly large pecs, and extreme durability and low injury rate. The risk is that aforementioned kyphosis and tight hunched posture, and this is why it pairs so nicely with the cable flies, which counteract that to some degree. For added credit, I'd also recommend something like a one-armed push-up, or building up to one. This movement encourages you to push all the way through the arm and to protract the scapula. This increases range of motion in the other direction, and again, gets you using all of your pushing muscles in tandem. It's also great for incorporating an element of anti-rotation in tandem. And again, these are movement patterns that we often use together. Oh, and make sure you're doing something in a more upright position so you can build the upper pecs as well. Let me know what you think about this method for building big, functional pecs. It might not be the most obvious answer, but I think it's easy to make a strong argument in favour of this kind of functional training. And if you do like this style of training, be sure to check out my ebook and training program, Super Functional Training 2.0. Either way though, thanks a ton for watching, and bye for now. This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Squarespace is a powerful website building platform that makes it easy for anyone to start building their own web pages. No coding required. It has a simple drag and drop system that lets you create your own designs or customize one of countless ready-made templates. You can have a website up and ready in no time at all. Honestly, you'll be surprised at just how easy it is, and you'll probably wish you did it much sooner. From there, you have access to all the features you could possibly need to take your site and your business to the next level. For example, there are advanced analytics and SEO tools that will help you to get your website ranked well in Google search results, so more people find your page. You can also make money by selling products through their e-commerce capabilities, or sell your services thanks to their fully featured appointment scheduling tools. Perfect for everyone from hairdressers to lawyers to personal trainers. There's everything you could possibly need to build a website or full-fledged online business, which is why it's used by some of the top brands on the web. To find out more, head over to squarespace.com, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Bioneer to get 10% off your first domain or website. Thanks a ton to Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and bye for now.